You're a good advisor. You could say, I got acupuncture.
The first thing I'd like to ask is, what does music mean to you guys? It's an outlet. Is it a means to, put yourself out there, connect, or bond with certain people in a way that's more than just conversational?
That's a tough question. I think it's mostly the lifestyle. Like, I can't imagine a day without it, without either physically playing music or absolutely listening to music, like every day. Even when we're recording and you're spending all day making noise and listening to the noise, then you leave, and what do? You put the stereo on and listen to music on the way home, and it's just it's like your molecules.
I think for most people who play the kind of music we play, or I don't know, maybe a lot of other styles of music, I think it's a coping mechanism. It's a way people, a lot of people get into music, get into it because they felt like they were outside, and so it's a way of kind of having the world make a little bit of sense,
Absolutely.
And so I think, there are a lot more sane things to do in your life, and it's got to be a lot more about something bigger than yourself and a way of connecting to the world, so it's the one thing that does kind of bind all people, is that, not our band's music, but someday that the world will unite in song, in our song, all songs.
Yeah. Pete Townsend was always talking about the one note hit was gonna be everything. What was that? He was starting that project Lighthouse. That was all about that.
Free and Easy.
Yeah.
They've done research kind of like villages where people have had no access to technology and no access to like conventional modern music, and they played them like major scales and minor scales and played certain keys, and they've asked them to describe it, it's happy or sad or whatnot, and there's a universality to that kind of how music feels, and Oliver Sacks or all these people have researched that we know something is happening in the brain when we hear music. We don't know exactly what it is, but so many different parts of our brain are stimulated by music, and so I think that's why it never really seems to get old.
So when did it happen for you guys? When you first picked up an instrument, or just kind of figured out that this is the life that you want to lead and this is what you want to pursue?
Why don't you tell me, Chi Master?
I'll tell you what, my parents came home from high school. I think I was a sophomore, and there was a drum set up that they bought and didn't tell me. It's the biggest surprise ever. So that was it for me. And then I met this friend. He and I was dating this girl in high school, and her sister was dating this guy, and we started playing, and he just looked like he was from outer space. He wore an army parka with XTC painted on the back, and he rode a Lambretta scooter. He was really into the 60s mod revival kind of thing. And it was just totally foreign, because in the Midwest it was all Pink Floyd and Bachman Turner Overdrive and stuff like that on the radio, and he had all this weird music that was still to this day awesome to me, and I got hooked. And we started playing right away. Even though I could just play like hi-hat and snare, that's it. I couldn't put it all together yet, but that was I just started out by playing right in bands. That was it for me. And also just visually, like album covers when I was a kid, I always grabbed albums in my mom and put them on, and I was grabbing for the artwork, and she had really great music, so I had a love of music, and this is going to be good, because I'm feeling like my body is starting to turn over. It's this weird thing. Acupuncture is doing something really cool in me right now, so take it away, Zach.
No, you're doing it. This is actually the best thing ever. I want to just let you say it.
Yeah, it's weird. You ever have that sensation
like
when you're
warming?
sitting?
You're kind of getting
Yeah,
cold.
and all of a sudden you feel like the chair is lifted somehow. Yeah, I'm warping.
So you're somewhere up there.
Yeah, music. Yeah, so
It's not
visually,
rejection.
I was a kid and I couldn't get into kindergarten because it was a one-room school kind of thing. And I went and my mom would always put albums on that I'd pick out. So I just loved the album covers, and I was always hooked to these visuals that you got from these albums. And they had, like, back in the day, back in the 60s, they put so much in the album cover, it gave you a really fun and a really interesting thing to look at while you listen to the albums. But like basically it's like a soundtrack to the artwork. You know, that's what I loved about music then, was that I didn't know it then, but now I can see that it was the artwork, and it really meant something to what was inside the record CD. So
that's where it all began, huh?
What's that?
That's where it all started.
It all started there, and my stepdad was a music teacher, and he also played kind of bluegrass style flat picking guitar, and we went to bluegrass festivals all the time. I always had music around from day one, like always around. That's why I took to it.
Awesome.
Yeah. Anything you want to add?
Important to have.
Oh, he said it all.
Yeah. Okay.
So that's why we need to have vinyl still, because you have to have that big visual that you can hold in your hand and look at and pay and
No, you know what's gonna happen
pay
is
attention to
we're
the
gonna have
artwork.
these be like in Star Wars, and pretty soon, you know, see how there's a circle here where you know, I don't know what this one does. I think it's the camera on this side.
Yeah.
It's gonna project a 3D
Like
hologram
Princess Leia.
image where you can get
An album
the
artwork.
three-dimensional kind of thing with your like liner notes and, you know, move and interact with the artwork.
Moving
It's
forward.
just saying.
Yeah.
So it'll be like probably much bigger.
I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah.
Nice.
I'll develop that on this winter. I'll be working.
So you guys met around 2003 after you kind of finished laying down the tracks to the first album, correct? Did you guys know each other beforehand, or how did you guys kind of come together making music?
Well,
Well, it's out there. What do we say about it?
Yeah, kind of going back a little bit.
Yeah.
do you want me to answer?
I know the answer. Wait. You made the record.
Oh.
And wanted to put a band. Here's what Zach did. He made a record, and wanted to put a band together around it to be able to, you know, to be able to go out and lay it down like we're doing tonight. So he had to find some people, and hey, Craigslist. Why not? It's quicker and faster than putting an ad in the back of the Guardian. So I answered a Craigslist ad, and
The rest is
he sent me a CDR of the record, and it was awesome. And so I was working as a furniture mover, and I had a long distance move from Mill Valley to Santa Fe, New Mexico. And I took the CDR Zach sent me and an Elliott Smith either or, REM and a Guided by Voices record. And that's pretty much it. And I listened to that, and because I was studying the record to get to know it, so I listened pretty much to just that record, and then those other ones. But those were all part of the influences he had listed in that Craigslist ad. So I took them all just to get into the headspace. That's
Yes.
I can't remember the original question now.
So let's talk about Nightingale Floors. How did you guys settle on that title, and is there any kind of between the lines aspect of or deeper meaning behind it?
Well, it was, I had that in my mind as what I wanted it to be called, and I usually, you know, Pat and I have a powwow when we're working on records about what we want them to be called, and actually that was easier. The record before, it took us a long time to really agree.
Yeah.
It wasn't an argument, but it was until we both kind of felt like we both felt like it was right. Sleep at Heaven's Gate was like, and it sounded like Vultures. That was right away certainty. I think we knew those were called before we even started working on
Yeah.
records.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like,
So
I know we're gonna make a second record right now, but the third record is gonna be called Sleep at Heaven's Gate.
yeah.
No, yeah.
I usually know pretty far ahead, and so yeah, Pat and I agreed that it was the right name. Where were we?
Nightingale Floors.
Yeah.
Right.
What it means.
It's meaningless. Tell me somebody who knows what it means and all.
Yes. Well, I traveled to Japan a couple of times. One time I was there, I was in Kyoto, and all the ancient shrines and old castles are there, and kind of go on these tours and look around. I was traveling by myself in Japan for a couple of weeks once, because I thought that would be a good idea. It's pretty hard to get around because no one speaks English, and like the subways, there's no English, so you're just trying to figure it out. But anyway, I want to see.
Like Steve Martin tried to sound it out.
Yeah, what's that you're saying? It's like they have a different word for everything.
Yeah.
They do it to screw you up. I'm not kidding. So I wanted to go see kind of ancient Japan and get a feel because Japan has this kind of dual culture where you have this reverence for the past and this hyper futuristic. It's kind of like strange, but really interesting duality. And so I wanted to kind of get a feel for the historic. And so I went on a little trip and had my little disc man.
You did?
Uh-huh. I had a little saucer full of discs.
Yeah.
And I listened to a lot of music, and I went to this one kind of like castle structure, and they had these floors that creaked when you walked across them, and they were called Nightingale Floors because they were constructed that way so that when the guards were protecting, they could position themselves inside, and they had the Nightingale Floors around the structure so that when somebody walked across they could hear it. So it's kind of like an alarm system. So it would chirp just like night. Sounds like the bird. Sounds like a nightingale. And that concept completely floored me. I mean, it was fun, but that was amazing to me that they used like this sweet sound to basically anticipate their enemies and murder them. You know, that's like such an amazing. First of all, it's a really intelligent thing to do, but it's also that idea of using sound and music to protect yourself and protect you from harm and use it as your own defense mechanism. I'm drawn to that, for some reason.
I think I have Nightingale Floors in my apartment.
No, those are just shitty floorboards.
Creaky floorboards. That's the next one.
Creaky floorboards is, that's going to be the B-side of the
Very cool. So, how is the creative process for this different than your previous records? You were working with producer, what's his name?
Jose Conseco.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
George Martinez.
George Martinez.
Jorge
Steven
Martinez.
Spielbergo was the producer, the executive producer.
Oh, by the way, I just want to back up to my creaky floors. You can always tell them, not when enemies are coming, but when someone's going to the bathroom.
Oh, that's what tells you?
Okay.
Well, we got to, I got to wrap this in a minute.
Creative process. Recording.
Yeah, what's your creative process?
Well,
How is it?
Yeah, which comes first, melody or lyrics? Or is it kind of a mixed bag?
I usually channel all the lyrics into Zach's brain via my brain, so I don't know what he does with them. I just give him all the words in random order, and he just puts them together somehow.
You know what a hive mind is?
Yeah, when a lot of different situations are linked together and sort of through mind connection or something like these, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
Sound
So
waves.
me and Pat are like these.
Okay.
In conclusion,
In
or
conclusion,
these.
Yeah, so
the producer we worked with was not Jose Conseco. He didn't work on this record.
no. Although, if we worked with Jose Canseco on this record, it would have sounded very different.
Yes, it would.
Do you know Jose Canseco?
Isn't he a baseball player?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So
Curious.
Little did we know that he's a American producer.
yeah, yeah, Gunner.
John Congleton, let's just put that out there. Let's just say that's good. Let's just get out. Let's go out on a limb and just say John Congleton.
John Congleton.
Just for argument's sake, let's
He
just
was the
say
producer.
John Congleton. Let's grab a name.
Yeah.
So, fellas, my window is closing. I have good questions for you, but I had a fan outside. I was asking some fans if they had any questions for you guys, and one of them, Brandon, or Braden, I'm sorry, was curious where Eyes came from and why it wasn't a part of any specific record.
That I wrote for a movie, and
What movie was that?
it was The Empire Strikes Forward.
Out.
No, Strikes. It was a movie called a romantic comedy called Just Friends, and so a guy I knew was working on that movie, and he said he needed a love song about this guy who loves this girl but she doesn't love him back, so honestly, by the time he asked me to write it, and then by the time we finished it, and it was just the quickest thing in the world.
We used one microphone and all.
Yeah, we spent like a year working on an album, and we did this thing in like 6 minutes, and
Yes.
it was like, and that was it. We just it was did it, and so we didn't put it on an album because we were like in between records.
Right.
So Sub Pop put it on like an EP or on a single. They did some, but it never had a really official release because it was on that movie. So there was probably like rights and whatnot, but yeah. So it's not a song that's personal or anything. I wrote it for the movie, and
Well, Permalite was definitely a departure. We got a producer who took iron-fisted control of the record. And that didn't really work for us in a nutshell. So the Nutshell, John Congleton, the Nutshell, let us explore the studio like a couple of monkeys in a zoo. And that's the way we always make records. We go to a zoo, we set up in a monkey house, and then we go to
which
town.
a lot of people would think is highly unsanitary,
I know,
but
but
it's also
Highly
you're
free.
unbridled and totally free.
So we kind of got out of our element on Permalite, and then got back into our elements, our Honda element.
I was gonna say.
And we watched The Fifth Element while making it, and we really enjoyed that new Tame Impala record, especially that song Elephant. That song in particular was really inspirational. I mean, not that it sounded like anything on the record, but that's my curveball right there. I want to take it from there.
I think people always want to have a narrative, when they're writing about it. It's not really like, it's not like we record songs and the only thing we do is for that album, and we're always working on songs all the time. And if we had sequenced this record differently, put other songs on that we did, we recorded a lot more, then I bet they would have, it would have been, but it's the same batch, same amount of time, same studio, same, but maybe it would have been perceived differently. Like the last record was perceived as some electronic dance record because there were like 2 songs that had drum machines on it, but this record has just as much synthesizer and drum machines on it as the last one and the one before it. It's just, story, and something to write about. But I see it, when we sit down and make a record, we're not sitting there going, okay, this is our electronic album, or this is our sad album, or this is our, it doesn't really work like that for bands, or at least it never has with us. We go through all these stages where we're hanging out in the studio and we're playing live and messing around, and then in the control room and plugging in stuff and making noises and tape loops and synth sounds and singing into the mic, and they evolve into something, so it's a lot longer and more of an iterative process than just like we're trying to stylistically make this mark, we don't have an agenda, we're not really, I'm not smart enough to think in terms of like the end result, marketing, PR, narrative perception of something. I just write melodies and we create arrangements that are fun, songs that we like, and if we're not sick of them and we're so excited, then we continue. And sometimes that takes form in an album, or the 8 gazillion other songs we've never released. We're always, some get finished and some don't, and so it's not as deliberate as it's perceived when people want to have something to write about. Yeah, and then, and I think that the record was a result of like, we were really working for 7 months on that thing, really, from the time we started in our studio until actually finishing with John. you know, it just slowly was changing, and you know, our demoing process was like 6 months long. It was really fun.
It was just, we just go to the studio and, hey, need something to do today. What should I do? Well, let's just go to the studio all day. Because
Yeah.
it's fun. We got back into this, like, what we did when we first started playing was just so much fun to see what comes out. Like Zach comes in with a guitar and a vocal, and then we go, well, let's just start putting a bunch of stuff on it because we can, and we got the time. We have no deadline. So let's just do what we love to do. And that's exactly what we did. And little did we know we were doing pre-production for the album. A lot of that stuff made it on the album. Those individual tracks from the demo sessions went onto the record. So there's a whole, the whole like kind of playfulness of being in the studio and just experimenting continued onto the record, in that we took that stuff directly from when we were doing it and put it on the record.
Right.
And sometimes, like, I don't even know if it's a song. You know, sometimes like, this thing just sucks. Let's not do this one. And just, you don't know even if they're songs at first. You know, they're things you're working on. You know, maybe they'll get to a point where you feel like it's a song, but not always. You know.
Because I remember listening to Harmonium off of Asleep at Gate. And,
Love you.
It just sounded like
I
that.
don't know who that is.
Really?
Yeah, no.
Right. Well, it just sounded like Harmonium kind of at the end. There's like a little bit where you guys probably recorded it live, where you guys kind of hit one note and landed on the other. Just mention it at the end of the song.
No, do you know what that is? Do you know what happened?
No. I was curious of where that came about.
Okay. We were trying to make the strings on the piano rattle, so we put little screws in them. So when I'd hit
John
a
Cage
note,
did that shit,
yeah, John Cage. So if we hit a note, it would kind of like rattle the strings. So I can't believe this happened, but Pat was sitting with me, and they kept like falling off, and I think
I was trying
like,
to hold it in place with a pencil.
yeah, and there's some like
Pencil
bag of
pencil.
weed, but they were like rattling, right, and they were gonna fall, and at one point I hit this note, and one of the screws shot up in the air, turned upside down, and landed perfectly in between another set of strings. It was like
weird.
the most amazing. It went like and just landed perfectly next to it. It
Right.
was just like the weird. I don't know. We tried to do it again. We couldn't make it do it, but it was like it was crazy,
It was a mess.
and it was
Something,
hilarious.
yeah.
It was like happening in the middle of the song. So, yeah,
Is that a-
I must go.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry.
No.
You guys
Oh.
extra.
Oh, you like this?